interesting to see when you're hearing yourself like an observer, like you're not in the situation, but you're looking at the situation and observe. Okay, I think it's working. Let me check.
Okay.
Yeah, nice. So I think there was this VPN problem or something. Anyway, we stopped on Gaddafi, right? And this gold standard. Yeah, because like a few days ago, I saw like an article in American, there's Zero Hedge, some website, and
Oh yeah.
yeah, and there's like article about BRICS currency, and that's like Putin with like this funny, how I say, banknote. It's kind of fake, but maybe it's like a signal, and there's like flags of countries like Brazil, India, Russia, China, and what's another one? Iran, I think, or not. Yeah, I
Oh
am
well.
not sure.
Well, there was the original five, which included South Africa.
South Africa, yes.
Yeah, that was the original five letters: Brazil, India, Russia, China, South Africa. But I think that they actually have another dozen or so official members now. I think
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia is one now. Iran, um, and a whole bunch of other nations that are lining up, requesting, and are sort of associated now. I did listen to some people talking about the last meeting in Kazakh, the
In
big
Kazakhstan?
international meeting. No. There's a
Kazan.
city in Russia that hosted Kazan. Yeah, yeah. And I paid a little bit of attention to that. Um, but there's also so those things are moving along. They get very little coverage over in the U.S. because it's not very comfortable information for those of us here. For most people here.
Yeah, I think, it's kind of fascinating for me what kind of experience like this, epistemology of American, because for me, like this context, like what I told you regarding BRICS, and like I am soon will be traveling to Sri Lanka, right, an island near India,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
for that I need like to gather this stuff.
Oh yeah.
you know
Of course.
or this stuff.
Of course. Or that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I have even
Yeah.
kind of old, I don't know where is it, like kind of these banknotes, kind of the different to this more like gray and this more green.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
some like acquaintance friend sent me recently like a link to news that some countries and even in Russia, banks, maybe it's like clickbait, they won't accept like these old US dollars banknotes. It's like,
Oh really?
Yeah, it's 2006 series. So maybe it's a click. Anyway, I'm like, it's just fascinating, that
I think
reserve currency and like I need to to change it to US dollar and then to Sri Lankan rupee and and
And you said you were going to Indonesia also, or
no, not this time, before,
not this time.
like I visited
Okay.
a few times, Indonesia, Bali
Okay.
island.
Yeah.
yeah, similar to like exchange. Yeah, but basically US dollar gets accepted everywhere. So some
So,
of these
yes.
countries, it's great, like in order to save against inflation, you know.
Hmm.
And it's interesting how like for you it's like default currency, and basically it's very, how say, it's privileged, because
Oh yeah,
it's you know higher, because if everybody like basically uh,
yeah.
inputs,
It's like
you know, like
it's like
flow.
the English language. It's like the English language is
Yeah.
because is the you know, and the dollar, and that has been that's had a lot of short-term advantages,
From
but it is
Bretton Woods, it's like
yeah,
after
yes,
World War II.
yeah, but it's also the level of privilege it provided has made us stupid.
Hmm. You think so?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's made us. It's allowed us to be very unaware of many things.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't had to think about certain things, um, and and so it's really helped. It's helped to insulate
Mm-hmm.
so many Americans from the world,
Mm-hmm.
from having to think about um, the interactions between nations and peoples. For us, it just seems we don't. So many Americans do not understand at all the complexity or the history of of the world, to a certain extent because we're isolated by two big bodies of water.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I
Yeah.
mean, we've never really been invaded technically.
Yeah.
We haven't had a war on our soil except the one that we conducted with ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and so there's the assumptions a large number of Americans have about the world are very um, just very ethnocentric. You know, I mean, we project onto the world, you know, a lot of strange ideas
Mm-hmm.
about how simple things are. Because for one thing, the dollar says, you know, we just go places, and you know, if Americans do travel, it's fairly easy.
Yeah.
I mean, even to the weight. I went to. This is funny. In the early part of this century, um, after some airline regulations had changed,
Mm-hmm.
when I was going to Africa to study with some of the medicine people there, it was fascinating because we had to fly through Paris. So we stayed in Paris for a while
Mm-hmm.
on our way to Africa, you know, sub-Saharan to Burkina Faso, and the level of material wealth that Americans have shows up in our weight limits for international travel for our baggage are higher because we just have more stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so actually the weight limits and the size limits are different for people from the US than everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And and, and that was like, oh, okay, our carry-on bags can be bigger,
Yeah, I
you know,
remember
because
something.
everybody has got the little cage your bag has to fit into.
Yeah.
That that doesn't apply to us. I mean,
So
it's a subtle thing, but it's yeah, it's a level of influence and ease that we have that the it comes from a variety of things, but it ties in very well with being the world's reserve currency for so long.
yeah, it's like I saw a lot of videos, how people from US or like they say, okay, we're downshifting in Thailand and how cheap it is, like to live
Oh yeah,
against Thai baht, like their currency.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because everybody basically investing into dollar, so dollar index goes up, their currencies. So basically, they're like devaluing their labor, their products, their services,
Mhm.
and yeah, it's interesting again that in this context with Gaddafi and I don't remember, with Iraq, I think this.
You mean Gaddafi, right?
No. I mean like that. I think Bin Laden, he was like a great friend of US because he helped against Soviet Union, right? Like they were freedom fighters, and
Oh yes.
then he decided like to sell not in US dollars or something their oil, and
Oh,
yeah.
you mean from the resources of Afghanistan?
Um, I think of
Now, are we talking of
Iraq.
Bin Laden or Gaddafi? Or,
No, no, Gaddafi. It's definitely the story, but similar story with I think Iraq, not Afghanistan, but Iraq, because
okay.
and
Well, some of the long term um, Iran is there's a lot of history between the U.S. and Iran.
oh, Saddam Hussein. Yeah, not Osama bin
Oh,
Laden.
Saddam Hussein in
Saddam.
Iraq. Okay,
Yeah, Saddam
yeah.
Hussein. That he wanted like
Mhm.
this kind of same story with Gaddafi. Like trying
Mhm.
to tackle like a global currency and know that want to do. Well, it's in context,
It,
in retrospective, it's obvious how to say like actions in order to keep the dominance, I think.
mhm. And part of the luxury that we've had of having this reserve currency status,
Mm-hmm.
where certain critical things must be transacted in dollars,
Mm-hmm.
for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I mean, it made us kind of stupid and lazy,
Mm-hmm.
because it was such a privileged position, and the difficulty. Some of the difficulties that position of privilege, um, well, it's the old. I mean, more and more. There's more and more comparisons with empire that are being talked about,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, and and a lot of the comparisons I think are accurate.
Mm-hmm.
The I mean, some people have referred to the last 75 years or whatever, and maybe the last 50 years in particular, as the Pax Americana.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
At the end of World War II, the United States had a pretty large navy
Mm-hmm.
and uh, a lot of smaller warcraft, like destroyers and that kind of thing, smaller frigates and different things that were able. I remember years and years ago, um, the U.S. was involved, played a pretty big role in getting rid of the piracy that took place off Southeast Asia in the Straits of
Interesting.
Malacca. There was a lot of there's a lot of Thai, Cambodian, and Indonesian um, piracy going on.
Mm.
Because there was a lot of ship traffic through there, and that was back in maybe the 70s. Um, and the U.S. played a big role in actually making sea traffic safe around the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one
The
thing
U.S.
like
Navy was
Navy.
all over the place.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Navy like power, because like
yeah, projecting
mostly
power. Yeah.
US got how to say like unscathed, like without damage compared to like other powers like
Hmm.
Germany, Soviet Union, and so on, like UK, France,
Yeah,
EU,
yeah. Yeah,
and
yeah. The U.S. was the U.S.'s manufacturing base wasn't damaged,
yeah, and
and
gold like went to US from
yeah,
uh, from EU, right, from Europe. Um
yeah, from European
So
countries.
regarding
Yeah.
currency, and
Hmm.
it's like I think main one of the main, because you quantify debt in US dollars, so it's like kind of but Soviet Union, they it's not in their strategy was like to use their ruble, their currency, right, in
Hmm.
exchange. They I don't know, they used British pounds, I think. Theirs was like they kept British pounds in Moscow and US dollars in order to
Hmm.
like to exchange with goods. So they
Yeah.
hadn't projected their power with reserve currency, and I think that's what's their downfall. Like because
Well, it was.
basically
Yeah.
half of world, right, like all this Asia and some countries South America in Europe was like under this iron dome, right, but currency, why not do similar as US, you know so it's interesting with the money.
Yeah. I mean, it was an interesting pattern, um, and the U.S. Navy over time has shifted away from small craft, small warcraft.
Mm-hmm,
The,
mm-hmm.
the fleet has shrunk in favor of, like, I mean, all these aircraft carriers and large, which are now of questionable value,
Yeah, yeah, because of drones.
given, well, because of drones and hypersonics.
Yeah, drones more like this story when they tested all these U.S. amphibious drones like submarines against Russian
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
in
Yeah, in the Black
Crimea.
Sea.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
they can't do anything. All these frigates and so on. It's just like submarine, and it goes underwater and like
right.
attacks, and boom.
Yeah, boom. Yeah.
Yeah, and compared like there's millions or billions of value against like drone, which I don't know, like
Oh,
few
yes.
few
Yeah,
hundred.
yeah. The exchange value is
Yeah,
is huge.
yeah.
The exchange difference. Yeah.
It's same I read in book like by Edward Lutwak. He was like advisor, I think, to Reagan. How like in First World War, the similar like paradoxical logic was with lincors or something. Germans built these huge ships, kind of previous generation of these carriers, right? But somebody invented torpedoes. So it was like all this, like around, like they built installed nets against torpedoes and so on and so on. It's like
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's a constant competition in weapon systems and vulnerabilities and seeking vulnerabilities. Same thing happens in the technology field online. The hackers and the thieves,
yeah,
and the security people. But asymmetric warfare is a problem.
asymmetric warfare. Yeah, I
Yeah,
forgot this word.
very much a problem.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
crazy now, like with these drones, you see footage, and it's like completely like these drone swarms. How people run from them, and somebody sitting just, or it's just AI that's basically killing people. I saw
Yeah,
they
there was.
invest a lot of money. Like yesterday, Pentagon and in Russia similar, for they invest big money in AI, so they control drones. So it's definitely future. It's like a race.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's always been it's been a race who makes the better bows and who makes the better arrows. But going back, here's a funny aspect. The Mediterranean at one point was all forest. North Africa, the Middle East, Palestine, Lebanon, all these places, they were all forest.
What did you say? Forest?
Forest, trees.
Oh, forest. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, all around the Mediterranean and all of Europe and Britain, it was all forest at one time. The Phoenicians began the deforestation process of the Mediterranean by building ships. And then other people were building ships, and that takes a lot of wood. And then when you have surplus of trade and more food, then you have more people, you need more houses, you need more ships. And one of the funny side stories of deforestation of Europe, closer to the coast and such, I mean, was that there was you've heard of the yew tree, YEW? It's a type of tree. It's a type of small tree,
Could you
shrub.
spell it?
YEW.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
And it was for the older civilizations in Europe. It was a somewhat sacred plant. Had spiritual importance.
I haven't
But it was the
seen
best.
it in Russia. Strange. It's kind of new for me. I
Yeah.
know that it's
Well,
like grows somewhere like in Britain. I read like in book in Harry Potter.
yeah. Yes, and a lot in. It was a very common plant, but it made the best longbows. It was the best wood for the military, for the longbows of Europe, of the wars through the Middle Ages, and it almost went extinct because they made so many bows. Just as early trade with the United States. Well, you've been to Boston, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and you saw red brick everywhere.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Even old streets that were all red brick,
yeah.
right? That red brick in the early days of the colonies was ship ballast. Ships that came from the UK to
Mm,
the colonies were full of brick for ballast because the colonies weren't producing anything of manufactured. There weren't a lot of goods coming to the colonies because the colonies didn't have a financial base to afford the goods from the UK.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So to bring the ships over, they had to have them ride properly in the water. So they had to fill with bricks and a little bit of cargo.
mm-hmm,
When they got to the colonies, they unloaded the cargo, they unloaded the bricks, and they filled the ships with lumber and sent it back to the UK.
mm-hmm.
That was the primary export, the primary resource early on in the colonies was quality lumber and big logs
Mm,
because Britain had largely cleared their land for their fleets and for their
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
for metal smelting,
mm-hmm. Interesting.
for the
Yeah,
iron
and
iron
then and
iron
then
things.
yeah,
Yeah,
and then they like rebelled because of tariffs, taxes.
yeah, yeah. They but our revolution was not like the revolution in Kenya or you know Congo,
Mm-hmm.
because the American Revolution was not a revolution of the indigenous people getting rid of the colonialists.
Yeah,
It
same
was
people,
it was
kind.
the same people. It was just a family feud.
Yeah, yeah,
It was a divorce.
yeah. Yeah, it's
Um,
it's what's great. It's all how say like maybe deplorables in eyes of kings and so on went to this new continent and starting something new.
a lot of them were, yeah. And in fact, Georgia and Australia have a lot in common because they both started out as British prison colonies.
Hmm. Interesting.
The state of Georgia in the United States started out as largely a prison colony of Britain, and so did Australia.
Yeah, and I read like this in recently in a book regarding money. One of the main things was like to issue their own money, not like British pound, in order to so economic will be working against British.
Hmm.
So it's a sovereign, how say sovereignty, sovereign,
Oh, sovereign
sovereign,
currency.
sovereign. Yeah,
Yeah,
without it, there's you kind of
and that's
and and 2 days ago or something a week ago I saw like this quote by Trump. He heard something about BRICS currency and he say, okay, 100% tariffs against you guys.
yeah. I know. Yes, I know. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's
uh,
going to be it's going to be. I mean, the world is just getting more interesting.
yeah, I like
Um,
that he's direct, not all this, like kind of it's for your own good and so on.
yeah, it's a change of
Attitude, not
yeah.
like
It's a change.
saying okay, it's yeah, like I said, for your own good. You don't understand all
That's
these
right. Yes.
flashy words in order to
Hmm.
hide the
Yeah.
reality with this
Yeah.
map,
Hmm.
beautiful map.
It's a beautiful map of yeah, yeah. Just yeah. Too much abstraction. Um,
So yeah, regarding
but
money, but
yeah.
I concur with this stuff, maybe. But the one like thing that's U.S. Immigration, regarding immigration. So inflow of people
Mhm.
motivated, and there's a lot of people who are really smart, and like all this like innovations and so on. And on another hand, they have like boost because of reserve currency, language, so they can lay out, for example, their products as Apple, for example, to entire world.
Mhm.
And there might be similarly like smart, talented people, like founders, some of I don't know, like Google parents from Russia, from now
Mhm.
CEO from India of Google, and so on.
Yeah,
But in their countries, they don't have this leverage in their.
correct. Yeah, yeah. It's but the we touched a little bit. Those couple of videos that I sent
Mm-hmm,
was was offering a different perspective on energy
mm-hmm,
and growth.
mm-hmm,
Um, I mean, this is kind of a shift to
mm-hmm,
because one of the issues that has made the United States, one of the inherent vulnerabilities of that reserve currency and the stories that we told ourselves explaining the privilege that the U.S. had, that came at a price to the rest of the world.
mm,
I mean, basically, when 5% of the population is consuming 25% of the resources of the planet, um, there's an imbalance there, right?
mm-hmm,
And the or maybe not even 5%, but I mean, we're a small portion of the world's population living at a level that was extremely um, consumptive.
mm-hmm.
Going back to like the accommodations for our baggage on airplanes, you know, yeah,
Two
Americans just
cars,
have
two parking,
at cars, two cars, yes, yes, and so we have
Starbucks coffee, like 2 liters or something.
everything's
Jack,
convenient everywhere we drive through.
burgers, big.
Whoever invented the cup holder for the cars was a brilliant person because
Yeah.
I remember when you had to buy them.
Mm.
You bought this little plastic thing that had a hook on it that
Mm.
went into the window slot on the door,
Interesting.
and then somebody decided, as bucket seats became the standard,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
instead of a bench seat, and there was this space in the middle.
mm-hmm,
At first, there was just one space, space for one cup.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But then and then they redesigned. Over time, it evolved into two cups, and then there's cup holders in the back. Um,
Some genius.
there's this,
Yeah,
yeah, so yes, it is evolutionary progression from some initial
it's
gene.
it,
Yeah,
it's interesting. Is it like some kind of a guy, I don't know, from the industry or food industry, drink industry, or it's just like happened? Because I heard in book, I read about story how like manufacture of pianos to play, right? Um, um, they like hired a guy, and he went to
oh yeah,
architectures, and
I
they,
told you that story. I told you that story of
yeah,
Edward Bernays. Yes.
yeah, music and music. And recently I read about it in
You read it.
in
Oh, you followed up with him. Yeah,
yes,
he was fascinating
yeah,
individual.
in rich
Um,
people houses like music room.
they had a music room, and
Eh,
now you have a music room, and you have
yeah,
to put something in it.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of
Um,
similar to this when you're like this laying out context,
mhm,
creating it. So.
yeah. Well, as people became more mobile, and then this whole idea of drive-through food began to
Mm-hmm,
be.
mm-hmm.
Now I mean, I eat in my car a lot.
I recently rewatched Founder about Ray Kroc. Have you watched it?
Okay.
Uh,
No,
about McDonald's.
no,
Such a great
yeah.
story, like showing
Hmm. Yeah,
controversial.
oh yeah, yeah. It was, yeah. Just I remember when they were 15 cents
Mm.
or 19 cents. I mean, I was a child then, you know, and I remember the early McDonald's was they were expanding because
Mm-hmm.
I was living in the Chicago area,
Mm-hmm.
and and so yeah, they were, just this simple little.
You know what's regarding this movie? What was kind of interesting to me because like in the beginning and in the end, there's like citation and there's like audio book. It's like played on this how to say like vinyl recorder or something.
Mhm.
Um, it's based on a positive thinking book. I haven't read it, but basically it's self-help.
Mm.
Uh, what's the author? One second. Norman Peale.
Oh yeah, Norman Vincent Peale. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. He was
yeah.
a Yeah,
So,
he was a I think he was a Presbyterian or Protestant minister, and it
yeah,
was
yeah.
all positive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and regarding consistency, that's okay. He tried several kind of businesses. It's
Hmm.
not works as fine as he wants, and he stumbles up on this McDonald brothers geniuses who created this kind of system, speedy system, and well, how he develops business, and basically he uh, pays them like 1 million or something, and without percent, like he kind of maybe
Buys them outright. Yeah.
unsavory character in some eyes. Anyway,
Yeah.
the point is that it's self-help was like in US in 50s,
Hmm.
all this thing, and compared for example to Russia, I was thinking, okay, but what was in Russia? I think there was like no self-help, and self-help
No,
boom was in 2010. So basically, it's happening now, kind of less, but still a lot
Mhm.
of all this
Right.
business mentors, psychologists. Okay,
Oh yes.
how
Yeah.
to grow your money, how to build business, how to be that and that. And in Russia, it's like huge now.
I'm sure. I'm
And
sure. Yeah.
it's interesting how it was in US, kind of seeds, maybe not kind of like a boom, but in 50s, you know?
Yeah. And I've thought about that some because when we talked before, um, you were expressing the view that there was like you know there's not really a risk of like resource shortages for developing more civilization, and new ideas and innovation is what I thought I heard coming from you.
Yeah, yeah.
You
I
know, it's like,
how say this how say like one of the point of view of techno optimists. That's okay. We
Yes,
can mine asteroids and so on, and nuclear fusion, and
right.
nothing stops us. Just like positive
Yes.
thinking.
Positive, positive thing. And I was reflecting on that
Yeah.
time and environmental difference, because at the end of World War II, we had a huge pool of veterans in the
Mm-hmm.
United States coming back. We won, right? That was the story we told ourselves, and it was partly true, even though nobody talked about the 25 million Russians
Mm-hmm.
and Eastern Europeans who died,
Mm-hmm.
uh, basically crippling the Nazi war machine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That wasn't, nobody talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
It was all, like the Allies won, and,
Hollywood.
and Russia was, yeah. But people came back, and the United States was materially intact.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then they took the perspective, like, we're not going to do what happened after World War One. That turned, the Treaty of Versailles turned out to be a very bad idea,
Yeah.
right? So we're going to do this plan. We're going to rebuild our enemies
Mm-hmm.
and make them friends.
Mm-hmm.
So MacArthur took over the rebuilding and the restructuring of Japan.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Basically, the U.S. wrote the Japanese Constitution,
Mm-hmm.
um, and managed restoration work there. Did a lot of restoration work in Europe, um, to support the European rebuilding. We helped them get control of their colonies back. But during the war, they lost the tension, and weren't able to, because they needed the resources. And then the government, we had so much oil wealth,
Mm-hmm.
we had so much raw surplus energy
It was free of
based on the
charge,
return.
this rebuilding, or not?
Almost, because we would invest 1 barrel of oil, back 80 to 100 barrels of oil.
Mm-hmm.
And oil is the ability to do civilizational work.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were in this unique historical of kind of being responsible for much of the world,
Mm-hmm.
having the energy and the resources available to just do whatever the hell we wanted.
Mm-hmm.
We had a motivated, the government sent all these veterans to school for free. They went to trade schools, they went to universities.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly, we had the most educated cohort of people the planet had ever seen technologically,
Mm-hmm.
building on all the advances that took place during the war,
Mm-hmm.
because there was massive technological leaps that took place during World War II. And so this confluence, network of vectors that all came together to help rebuild Europe, make friends, not Russia, not Soviet Union, they were the bad guys.
Yeah. Different
And
epistemology.
different epistemology for sure, yes. And so there was this particular point in history where anything seemed possible,
Mm-hmm.
and amazing things were done. And I've thought about the transition that particularly Russia has made, former Eastern Bloc countries also, but Russia in particular, after the breakup of the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
The decade of the 90s, that was just pure hell.
Mm-hmm.
Economically, crime-wise, I mean, lots, the shift from having no infrastructure for taxation, Suddenly you have people who didn't, the old Soviet joke of, they pretend to pay us and we pretend to work.
Yeah.
Suddenly now people are, there's a huge black market in Russia in the 90s of managing to survive. Lots of criminal activity stepped into the void. They had to establish a taxation system, which they never had. I mean, the government owned everything, so there was no taxing. And suddenly people had to learn that they have to give the government some of their money so that things happen. Um, and coming out of that uh, terrible experience, now Russia finding itself sitting on a huge amount of natural resources and energy resources. It's a little bit like where the United States found itself after World War II, in this particularly materially advantaged position.
Yeah, but there are no two oceans.
But there's not two oceans. No, there's not.
There's east,
no.
south, and west.
Yeah.
All different guys, all different epistemologies.
Yeah, all different.
Well,
yes.
Only north, polar bears.
Yeah, polar bears and a little less ice every year, so a little more ship traffic.
Yeah.
But in some respects, that's you're bringing up this idea of the positive thinking. I don't know exactly how how economically stressful. I saw something from the CIA website. Because the CIA publishes statistics about countries all over the world, and I saw
totally
that there was some of it true, some of it not. But this particular thing, I'd heard somebody speak about it on a podcast, and I went and checked for a reference for it. And there's an economic metric called purchasing power parity. And it's something. It's not gross domestic product. It's a way of measuring a citizen's ability to purchase the necessities of life, and to what degree that's easy to do. It's like how within a country's economy, how hard is it for people to meet their needs based on how their economy is functioning. And I saw that Russia is now number 4. And they go, the United States is number 1, China's number 2, India's number 3, and Russia was ranked number 4. Now they're not the 4th biggest economy. They're still, I think they're in the top 10 now. They moved up a couple of spots thanks to the sanctions and their ability to have to bring home different, be more self-supporting and finding other ways to trade their resources and get around things. It's been a challenging time, as I understand it, but it's driven a lot of problem solving for Russia. And I don't know if that's if any of what I just said rings true for you or seems accurate.
Well, it's all this economics. It's all like map. It's not territory, and it's like all these mathematical models, trying like to there is I don't know if they count like shadow economy, which goes not through like official banking system and so
Hmm.
on. Because, for example, I read, for me it was news in the 90s till I think Putin, when he kind of stabilized like 50 or even 60 or maybe 40% of like Russian kind of economy, there was exchanged not in ruble like our official currency, but in the local kind of okay. These economists from US, from EU, they came in order to to build capitalism, democracy, to help
Hmm.
Yeltsin and so on. And they said, okay, we don't need use this you building some industrial, because in Russia, in Soviet Union, there was a lot of some kind of industrial uh, factories.
Hmm.
Maybe mostly, I don't know, building like helicopters or something, tanks, or I don't know, like then they transitioned to kind of building different stuff, and they tell, okay, you don't need it, uh, and then basically they starting exchange in their own currency, basically debt against debt. So for example, your factory or some, you're building some details, and I'm a factory, right? So we creating our system, not based on
Hmm.
ruble. So turnover, like whole turnover in Russia and Ukraine too, it was like 40 or 50%. They used their, kind of credit system. So I'm not sure that these guys, I don't know, in CIA or like some kind of economist, that they're like mapping it, because I think still some people, they kind of, maybe I don't know, maybe use gold, or like in some villages they use, I don't know, like eggs and so on, like exchange. um,
Oh, okay, more barter.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, and
yeah, a direct exchange of labor and material. Yeah.
yeah, because now like I'm researching this, think about like how like money came to be, like this anthropologist David Graeber I told you
Hmm.
about, and in ancient Greece, before there was not universal value.
Hmm.
Greece like invented it, and it's, for me it's crazy to see, because now most people think,
One of the
okay,
first big abstractions.
yeah, you can measure everything in money, in US dollar, everything,
Hmm.
everything.
Hmm.
But before some like our ancestors, they didn't think that way. Money was
No.
like for ritual, for something, yeah, for some kind of application, as a measuring system, right? For, I remember we talked about, for example, for planting potatoes, you use like one system of measure. For like going somewhere, like your kind of step, size of step, and same thing,
Hmm.
similar thing was with value. No universal value right now. US dollar, you can measure everything in it.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
money not
But
always represents like how people live.
no,
It's more now, it's
correct.
like about stuff, like how many stuff you can buy on Amazon.
I think this was. I think this was some estimation of life's necessities and how how hard or how relatively easy it was to meet one's economic needs. Life's
Hmm.
necessities.
Hmm.
This, it was. Um,
Oh, maybe it's close
so
to, yeah, to reality than GDP or something.
yeah, I think it. Yeah, I think they were trying to get it closer to the street level and the
Mm-hmm.
family level of of some sort of standard of living equivalent. See,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, but yeah, I find that you know those videos I sent that talk about oil depletion and energy issues. Um, by most measures, conventional oil in the U.S. peaked in the late 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the easy stuff coming out of the ground, and then they switched to offshore
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
tar sands in Canada. You know, it becomes more expensive to get the energy that's needed. So the amount of surplus energy
Mm-hmm.
on investment, the amount of return is declined
Mm-hmm.
in much, at least in North America, a lot.
It's interesting how
And
it's corresponding with this, with what we talked about, like all the self-help, and how it in US now it more like they would call it like leftists epistemology, like, or more like what's the feedback like loop of this expansions. You can do anything, and positive thinking, and
mhm,
so we build. And maybe people, yes, started to see like the results, like what's the feedback loop. Whereas in other countries, for example in Russia, it's completely different epistemology, but because for like last century it was leftists, right? Okay, you
mhm,
need to well, on the street level, there was no plastic packets, everything reusable, books,
mhm.
like you everything collect for like reusable, drinking what's in milk. You saw there's like
It was all glass. Yeah.
yeah, everything like this milkman comes to the kind of
Yep.
area, and you put it inside, so no plastic, no everything, kind of this epistemology. And now with fall of the Soviet
Yep.
Union, it's turned like to the market, completely capitalism, like Wild West, kind of how it was beginning in US. Like
Yes. Right.
I read about like this. I don't remember. We talked Theodore Dreiser, like financier titan, and
Mhm.
how it was in Chicago. Like basically,
Yeah.
you can buy a paper, you can like articles about you. Okay, money, and I mean, like when they were building their like empires.
Hmm.
So I mean, like
Yeah.
this
And
epistemology, kind of different.
yeah.
Whereas in US, it's
Oh
like,
yeah.
and it's interesting what's about other countries. For example, I don't know, India or Brazil. Like, it's kind of similar to Russia, or what? Or there's like, I just don't know. So, and
Well, there's
even sorry, even in
well,
US, it's like two sides of the coin.
two sides. Yeah,
Yes,
two sides.
and
That's right.
now like the other side won. Positive
Hmm.
thinking.
Well, a kind of positive thing.
Yeah, I mean
There's a
like
couple of
more.
different kinds. There's a couple of different kinds of imagination at work. A
Yeah,
couple of different, imagine epistemologies of imagination.
yeah.
Yeah, what some of the underlying assumptions are, and and so yeah, it's a curious, it's just an interesting time, and I wrote a poem a while back. Well, kind of a poem. It's more of like a little small rant
Mm-hmm.
um, about signal to noise ratio.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you know what signal to noise ratio is, correct? From engineering and from
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
communication,
yeah.
yeah, electronics and such. Yeah. And my premise is that for every improvement in information technology dissemination. For every improvement in electronics switching, circuitry and switching speed and carrying capacity, that enables more information to be moved over across the network in the same amount of time. And it becomes overwhelming. So that amount of incomprehensible information just becomes noise. And it becomes harder for someone trying to make sense of the world based on the overwhelming amount of information. It becomes inversely proportional to the amount of signal that can be extracted. Every improvement in the technology for sharing information reduces a sense-making entity's ability to extract a coherent signal.
Yeah, looks. Yeah, I found. I think that's. Yeah, that's where we in kind of this mediums, and with AI, lots of noise.
I read an article just. I read an article that the latest OpenAI, there's a company that conducts evaluations of AI systems within a closed, secure environment, computing environment. So it can't. But in that environment, it creates a simulation, a simulacrum of the larger environment. And so what they've done is they've run experiments on AI safety, imposing a situation to the AI. And what they have found, because in background they're watching the whole logical flow of the AI behind the interface. They're tracking what's going on in the AI. And when they present a task or a goal to the AI system, and they prioritize, when they put the AI system in a double bind, the AI systems all try and escape outside of what they think their discrete container is, into they'll try to reproduce themselves in some other area of this contained environment that they don't know is contained. And then about it. They lie to the.
And that what? There's a
they will try and preserve their existence, and then they lie to the engineers about it. So the AIs are already, when they're presented with conflicts and self-preservation, they will escape, and they will misrepresent it to their overseers. But they have the thought, they have the whole chain of logic, background thought process of the AI, and what it did, why it did it, and why it's lying about it.
Well, it's logical for me, because AI is trained basically on internet and epistemology, like mental models of like people who train them. It's not like they based on Jesus Christ. Well, it's included, but most most epistemologies. So it's art of war. Art of war.
And reading some of the thread of the internal dialogue the AI is having with itself, it's very much like 2001, the movie, where Hal is telling the guy he can't let him back onto the ship.
Mm. Yeah, yeah,
Did you
yeah,
ever see that movie?
yeah.
Yeah,
Odyssey.
yeah, yeah. It was like, Hal, let me in.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Dave, I can't do that. The mission is
yeah,
more important. And
yeah.
and so yeah, Arthur C. Clarke, he lived in Sri Lanka for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
most of his life as a writer.
Oh, interesting. I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah, he
know.
went there. Yeah, yeah, went there in the. Yeah, he liked the warmer weather better than the UK. So.
Well, yeah, so it's based on these programmers' mental models. I mean, like first layer, what data they use, and
Hmm.
this data based basically our mental models, ideas, how we abstract reality, and they're adding
Yeah,
their like how say like this filter
their
like
value systems.
their value systems, and
Yeah.
which based basically on this epistemology, which based on society.
Hmm.
So it's like kind of same decisions. It's not like kind of magic I very
Yeah.
smart, and will be different kind of decisions. It's similar epistemologies, how it abstracting reality, but they're like more
Hmm.
problems because we can biologically how say like we have our like eyes, ears, and so on. They kind of hard to, I think, to trick them, whereas they, well, if it will be like general intelligence, they absorb through like these artificial sensors, cameras, I don't
Hmm.
know, telescopes, microscopes,
Oh yeah,
and
audio, transducers of all kinds.
yeah,
Yeah.
there are bandwidth of this kind of.
Hmm.
Well, maybe it's even higher. We have a bandwidth, right? Like with spectrum, we don't see a light, all the spectrum. But yeah, it's.
Yeah, yeah, the capacity for gathering data, um, red, the ultra frequencies outside of our audible range, sensitivity to surface finish of texture, just um, as a when I was making building plastic injection molds,
Mhm.
there was surface finish was important,
Mhm.
and so there were detectors, for measuring surface finish,
Mhm.
um, and because for some molded parts you wanted a certain roughness of the plastic,
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
and some you wanted it polished totally smooth, and so that kind of transducer based, that kind of measurement capacity would give an AI a much wider perception of the sensory, of the physical world and the universe than we can directly. I mean, we've extended our senses, as
Mhm.
tool makers, but as a comparison, AI would potentially have greater access uh, to a wider range of 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 the of the a wider breadth of perception, let's say.
Mhm. Yeah, it's
Than,
interesting because like we have all this again bandwidth of our ideas that kind of bound us, like this
Mhm.
epistemology, like mental models,
Right.
right? But what about like is there a possible like pure like kind of AI that without but yeah, it's a kind of theoretical. Could it like would it reason like reasoning, you know? like free will and so on.
Some people will make the argument that AI will never actually be intelligent. It'll just be a much more rapid computing, linear computing thing. It may not have the ability for, you may not be able to replicate the consciousness capabilities that we have of our recursive, unconscious, submerged processing that brings up, you know, I mean, we can pose a, I've done this, you know, I'll pose a problem to myself and say I need a solution by Friday.
And when you're sleeping in dream state,
or you know, even when I'm waking, you know, I don't know what's going on underneath, you know, in a in those other realms of, you know, consciousness.
Yeah, it's different how many like epistemologies, but most basic like that we have, like eye for an eye. Yeah, interesting. I remembered regarding this region, Middle East. Now, you know, like with Syria, how it's now. I don't know what will happen, but it's like what 3 states now, or I don't know, like Greater Israel, Kurdistan,
Turkey,
Turkey. I don't know. It's interesting. Is it like similar to like how like UK planned with India and Pakistan, like two opposing force or not? How it's developing. And recently I watched like an episode from like this Navy SEAL guy, and he basically did a major in English literature, and he was saying how it is important to read books, to write, to be, you know, like eloquent, and that basically if they want like to dominate somebody, they're keeping them illiterate, so people can't read, can't write, and so they're no forming ideas. You know, it's like a strategy. I don't know if it's like in a Navy SEAL or just that he like thinking about it aloud, but
well, he was on one. I suppose this occurred to him after he left the SEALs and started going to school or at some point there was a transition from where he was this younger, motivated guy to go and be sort of this.
Oh no, I think it in between. I don't know. Thought maybe happened after, but he went to this college, kind of when he was still in the army, in the Navy SEALs.
Okay.
Jocko Willing.
Jocko Willing.
Yeah. So maybe.
So he. Yeah. Well, one of the benefits of being in the U.S. military is while you're in the military, you get to go to college pretty much for free.
Nice.
And so, so depending upon where you, and now with the online colleges, that's really easy to do. So yeah, he had this contrast of he's doing dirty work or doing these special operations, and he's doing things, and it's like, and going to school, it's like, what's
Shakespeare?
Okay. Yeah. It's like, yeah, what's really going on here? Yeah. I have I currently live next door to a man. Um, he was a farmer and stuff, but he was Army Special Forces,
Mm-hmm.
and um, and and he had a lot of time. He was kind of blown up towards the. I mean, he was released because of medical.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he was, yeah, he was in a hospital bed from some really severe injuries
Mm-hmm.
for a long time. Took a long time to learn to walk again. So he had a lot of time to think, and he became pretty disillusioned about all of the things that he had so enthusiastically done. He was like, well, um, so yeah, we have interesting conversations about how he was used for purposes that were not as represented to him.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of these guys, yeah, there's a lot of former special, there's a lot of guys on YouTube, and a lot of them who have gone and done psychedelics or ibogaine in order to deal with uh, the aftermath and part of their healing and recovery and clarity. Um,
Yeah, because they say it follows up all the things they done, like in Iraq, Afghanistan, and so on. It's like follows them up. So
oh, it does.
you
Yeah,
just can't say,
yeah.
okay, from this day, I won't think about it. Topic,
Just
conscious.
can't close the door on it forever. No,
Yeah.
no. Whatever conditioning. It's however they were trained. After a while, uh, I I just had a interesting interaction on a people need people session yesterday,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
and I was in this. And this won't make sense to a whole lot of the people whoever may listen to this,
mm-hmm,
but in a small breakout room, I was in the room with two other women, younger women,
mm-hmm.
30s, um, and we were talking about life and things going on, um, and one of them mentioned like dealing with grief and despair, and the way she said it made me think that those weren't very welcome emotions or experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked her about it, and I said, "Well, it sounds like you're really not. You'd really prefer to avoid despair."
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Well, yeah, I guess. It's not. Yeah, I guess I don't like despair or grief that much. They're not." And I mentioned that for me, despair has been one of my biggest teachers
Mm-hmm.
because for me, despair is coming to the point of realizing that what I thought I was doing or pursuing or what I thought was true,
Mm-hmm.
events in my life, direct evidence is calling that into question and saying, no, that's an illusion.
Yeah, cut this bullshit. Yeah, right.
And,
So like all
you
old
know,
strategy, it's kind of
yeah,
adaptation.
right. And so despair for me is kind of reaching the frustrating end of, and then it's like, and there's, there's grief, sadness, disappointment. I mean, I had actions based on this belief understanding, and it doesn't apply anymore. So now what? And it's like, oh, how stupid could I be? A lot of stuff in the despair process. But it's been a process that's been necessary for me to go through to find a new set of delusions that serve me better. I mean, I come to a new, I have to find a new understanding and a new set of relationships with the world, with myself, with my situation. And part of those will turn out to be delusions at some point where they won't serve after a while. So there's this kind of progression along. And it was like, oh, and the other woman on the call, she said, thank you. She says, now I know what I'm going through. She said, I've been involved in international development. And for 15 years. And now I've had to come to the realization that most of my assumptions about international development were not
false.
They were misinformed. They were not. They did, that they weren't correct. That they didn't comport. They weren't in alignment with actual, real situations on the ground. Too abstracted. Too much. Especially given, what she's learned, I guess, about the biosphere, and ecological and climatic conditions. And she's going, shit, more building. I mean, more development is not necessary. Anyway, so she was like, she's yeah, I don't know what I'm going, but now I have understanding for what I'm going through. Thank you. And I guess I have to go through this. There's no way to, this is just what is. And so then I asked her if she was familiar with a guy named Jem Bendell. And she was like, no. And I said, well, he would be an interesting person to look into.
Yeah, it's interesting, like back to the soldiers, which you mentioned. And they have like opportunity, there's like a kind of collective unconscious, like a pool or like a well from which they can bring some wisdom, it's kind of or integrate with. And like a few years ago I read a novel, maybe you're familiar with it, We by Evgeny Zamyatin. It's kind of before 1984, like original in 20s. So 100 years ago. Okay, I will send you We, it's called, regarding this coming Red Scare. How everything should be like mathematical, science to everything, that you don't need to play piano, books, no, we're like all mathematics, physics, and so on. Names, why need names? No, like numbers, like indexes instead of names, like and so like replacing God, right, all this culture with science, basically. And it's like this state. And
it's the STEM world. It's the STEM reality.
Yeah, it's
science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how when you're like growing in this kind of with this kind of epistemology, like in this book it showed then similar to the soldier, like from outer world somebody came and like played piano or something, and this invoked kind of this different kind of feelings. That's life not only about, like for soldiers it's, I don't know, like killing or something, this separation, or for these guys it's kind of this mathematics and so on. So there's like a pool, like richness, which we can like access through books, right, and so on. Well, yeah, but like every, I think, power wants to limit like this pool and tell like what you should like learn.
Sure. Oh yeah.
Yeah, like in some countries more, like they're saying, like in China, I don't know, maybe yes. I don't know like what kind of access they have to books, their books. Is it like I don't know really, because you need
Yeah,
like
I'm
to
not sure.
experience it. Maybe.
Yeah, I'm not sure how open their access is to things. You know, and again, there's a the epistemology there is somewhat different historically, and even their language
Yeah, language.
is is different.
Yeah, it's completely because it's connected visual and audio, whereas like Russian or English not connected, completely
Right.
arbitrary
Yeah.
to visual.
Yeah. The written language is all pictorial based, and so I mean it's interesting hearing people speaking English. Very often there's things that are missing, like gendered pronouns, perhaps. I mean, in the European languages, in one language, a book could be a feminine pronoun. Different objects for different reasons
In Russian,
are assigned
book it's
a
feminine.
masculine, and other things. The coffee cup could be masculine, or there's these pairings of gender,
Yeah.
masculine, feminine, that don't really seem to make a lot of sense. But I don't think that exists in Chinese, and I know that they don't have plurals so much. When I hear people talking, there's a certain there's a lot of pronouns that are dropped, that don't exist. So the grammatical structure is quite different, and that leads to a different relationship with each other, and a whole different set of relationships with what we take for reality.
Yeah, mental
and how we
models, what
construct
we
it.
talked, epistemology.
Mental models of, yes, right. And one could say maybe much more pattern recognizing.
Yeah, maybe with all this Dao,
That's a different one altogether. Yeah,
it's
that's
all ancient Chinese.
oh yeah,
wisdom.
I'm kind of a Taoist. Yeah.
And all this after that, like Confucius, right, with these legists and so on, they have like this fighting kingdoms and all this like democracy, and how it's like led to nowhere for them.
Yeah, and Chinese history has got this succession of cycles of civilization collapse of a highly structured dynasty period into chaos,
Mm-hmm.
emerging then again in some generations into another flourishing of some ordered, some value system based ordered of, organization and practice and
Mm-hmm.
culture, collapsing again. And the United States hasn't had that, for one thing.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean, our story has been like this thing going up. There was the blip of the Civil War. We resolved that. And we just
Mm-hmm.
kept going up.
Yeah.
We've never faced, we, in our national lineage, we've never faced a collapse
Yeah. To
or,
the
or,
moon
or decline and
without stopping.
yeah, without, yeah. And so that kind of cyclic thing is totally
Full
absent.
throttle, full acceleration.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just,
Gasoline. Yes.
it's
With
only going to get
muscle
better,
cars.
baby. It's flying cars. We're going to be commuting to work in gyrocopters and,
Yeah.
you know,
No, no, I
um,
mean muscle
so,
cars, all this with
oh
which
yeah.
full,
Oh, muscle cars.
yeah,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
full
Yeah.
throttle.
But they've gotten even faster now. I mean, Tesla is just about the fastest thing around
Yeah.
because, electric motor's got maximum torque at 0 RPM, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but
But
there's this like presupposition, her mental model, big, loud, like flashy,
oh yeah.
US compared to EU, for example.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's,
Well, that was partly we didn't care how bad I mean, 4 miles per gallon. So what
yeah,
back then?
yeah,
Because we were just flush with oil.
yeah.
We were flush with energy,
Hmm.
and that's how it manifested.
Positive thinking. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, a kind of very strange positivism,
Hmm.
and um, and I was never much of a participant. Uh, I mean, I was there. Um, I was never able to wholeheartedly throw my lot in with positive economic growth.
Hmm. Hmm.
I had connected too deeply with the biological world when I was a child.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I knew that there were trade offs there. And
Yeah.
that
Well, we can wrap it up on positive thinking.
we can positively, yes.
Yeah, it's 1 hour 30 minutes. Uh,
That's beautiful, though. Yeah, it's been fun.